Welcome back, Focus Learners. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining us today because, honestly, we're looking at something truly masterful. Okay, let's dive into this. In today's explainer, we're breaking down a perfectly paced, incredibly tight, short horror script called The Glitch in the Glass. We're going to look at the exact mechanics, like the literal anatomy of how a writer constructs a nightmare right there on the page, beat by beat. So, how exactly do you build cinematic terror in just 3 minutes? I mean, that's a remarkably short amount of time to take an audience from, total calm to absolute heart pounding panic. But that is exactly what this script pulls off. Today, we're treating this explainer as an anatomical masterclass. We'll dissect how the writer generates such visceral, grounded dread without leaning on cheap tricks. It's all about structure, psychology, and pacing. Right, so to really understand how this works, we first need to pinpoint the exact genre we're dissecting here. This script operates right at that sweet spot, the intersection of psychological and supernatural horror. The tone the writer specifies is dark, quiet, claustrophobic, and entirely grounded. And what makes this so incredibly effective is how it blends a very real, very human experience, intense mental fatigue, with impossible supernatural elements. The horror here doesn't kick off with some monster jumping out. It starts with a deeply relatable human vulnerability. Moving on to Section 1, setting the claustrophobic scene. Look, before you can scare an audience, you have to trap them. And you do that by grounding the setup in a relatable, everyday scenario that just feels undeniably real. So, here's our protagonist, Elena. She's in her 30s, she's exhausted, stressed out, and working incredibly late in this empty apartment. I mean, we've all been there, right? Let me ask you, have you ever been up way too late, staring at a dark screen or down a dark hallway, feeling totally drained, and suddenly you get that random, irrational jolt of fear? Well, Elena's sheer exhaustion creates the perfect, logical foundation for paranoia. Because she's so tired, we, the audience, are totally ready to write off the first signs of danger, exactly like she will. The writer immediately boxes us into this atmosphere using some brilliant sensory details. We're dropped into a cramped, dimly lit studio. Outside, you've got rain actively slapping against the window pane, which gives us this really isolating soundscape. Inside, the primary light is just the harsh, unforgiving blue glare of a laptop screen. And then the focal point, a large vintage wall mirror mounted right behind her monitor. It reflects not just Elena, but the dark, empty hallway behind her. So before anything remotely scary even happens, the scene is suffocating. The tension is already dialed up. All right, that brings us to Section 2, the inciting glitch. Now, this right here is the exact, precise moment where reality first begins to fracture and the writer accelerates the pacing beautifully. Watch how subtly this plays out. Step 1, Elena takes a sip of her cold coffee. Step 2, she sets the mug down, but in the mirror, the reflection sets the mug down just a fraction of a second later. It's this uncanny little delay. Step 3, she freezes, tilts her head to check, and the reflection syncs back up perfectly. And this brilliantly illustrates how the writer plants the first seed of supernatural terror. It's not a monster in the closet. It's a tiny, almost imperceptible violation of the laws of physics. It literally makes you question your own eyes. So the really crucial point is how Elena reacts to this. She sighs in relief, kind of chuckles at herself, and whispers, "Go to sleep, Elena." She rationally dismisses this terrifying glitch as simple, sleep-deprived paranoia. And as a writer, this is a genius move. By having the character logically explain away the threat, it brilliantly lowers the audience's guard right before the real nightmare begins. Which leads us directly into Section 3, escalating the terror. Okay, now the script really shifts gears. Elena reaches out and closes her laptop. The blue light fades. The desk is plunged into near darkness, lit only by a dim street lamp bleeding through the window into the mirror. The safety of that laptop light is just gone. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it visualizes the script's core mechanic, contrasting physical safety with a supernatural threat. Elena looks in the mirror and sees a door down her hallway slowly creaking open. She whips her head around to look at the actual hallway, but in the real world, the door is completely closed. She turns back to the mirror. In the mirror world, the door is wide open. It is a stunning visual split that traps the viewer right between what's real and what's impossible. And in that open doorway in the mirror, a tall, impossibly thin figure now stands, veiled in deep shadow. This is our chilling visual introduction of the entity. Notice how the writer doesn't overdescribe it. Just impossibly thin and deep shadow. Honestly, That is all you need to ignite the audience's imagination. The tension is sky high now because Alina is trapped. The threat isn't physically in the room with her, but she can see it as clear as day right there in the glass. The escalation here is just ruthless. Alina panics, looks back at a real hallway, and nothing. Empty, silent darkness. The door is still shut tight. But when she looks back at the mirror, the entity has crossed the distance instantly. The figure is no longer at the end of the hallway, it's standing directly behind Alina's reflection, its pale hands resting lightly on the reflection's shoulders. And the reflection isn't moving. It's just staring straight ahead, crying silently. The writer escalates the dread perfectly here, having the entity move impossibly fast while our protagonist remains entirely frozen in panic. And then comes what I think is the most terrifying sensory crossover in the script. In the mirror, the figure leans down, its mouth stretching into this void of jagged darkness, and it whispers. But no sound comes from the mirror. Instead, real Alina hears the whisper right beside her real ear, cold and damp. Don't turn around. The visual is safely trapped in the glass, but the audio has breached reality. It is an incredibly effective, skin-crawling moment. Which brings us to Section 4, the final jump scare. The pacing gets incredibly rapid here, mimicking Alina's rising hysteria as we hit the climax. In the glass, the figure's pale hands suddenly reach out toward the camera frame, literally straddling the boundary of the mirror's glass like it's climbing out into the real world. And Alina just snaps. She screams, grabs her heavy ceramic coffee mug, and violently smashes it right into the center of the mirror. Crash. Spiderweb cracks shatter the glass. Shards rain down onto her desk. She's fighting back the only way she can. And then, silence. The room is completely still. The only sounds are the heavy rain outside and Alina's frantic, hysterical panting. She covers her face, just trembling. This right here is the false resolution. As an audience, we exhale, right? The glass is broken, the conduit is severed. We're grounded back in the physical reality of rain and heavy breathing. But in horror, silence is a weapon. Slowly, Alina lowers her hands. She looks down at the broken pieces of mirror scattered across her desk. In one large cracked glass fragment near her keyboard, she sees her own eyes staring back. And then, the reflection blinks. Alina didn't blink. The reflection's mouth slowly curls into a wide, unnatural smile. And then, a pale, cold hand grabs real Alina's real shoulder from behind. The entity didn't just reach out of the mirror. Breaking the mirror let it out. And bam, the script instantly cuts to a blackout. The writer doesn't show us a monster attacking her. Instead, we are left with pure sensory audio. A wet, guttural inhale, followed by a sharp, muffled gasp. Ending on this audio cue is just a masterstroke. It brilliantly leaves the horrific violence entirely up to the viewer's imagination, which, let's be honest, is always, always scarier than whatever a special effects team could put on screen. It's a sharp, chilling payoff that just hits like a freight train. It's just a fantastic piece of structural writing. I mean, we went from a tired woman drinking coffee to an inescapable nightmare in less than 4 minutes, all driven by isolation, sensory manipulation, and the breaching of physical boundaries. So as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with this lingering thought. Next time you're up late working in the dark and you happen to catch a glimpse of yourself in a dark screen or a hallway mirror, what would you do if your reflection smiled back? Stay curious, keep learning, and maybe leave the lights on tonight.